very good morning. Today we will discuss immiscible liquids and the process of steam distillation. Now, in the earlier lectures, we have discussed that there could be different type of liquid-liquid systems. In the first category, we studied about the liquids which are completely miscible, and we saw that Raoult's law is working for them. And there are certain solutions which are completely visible, and Raoult's law, they are deviating from the Raoult's law. In the second category, we studied liquid-liquid systems which are partially miscible, and for such partially miscible systems we have seen that solubility varies sometimes with temperature, and there could be some systems which have no effect of temperature on their solubility. So, in case of partially miscible liquids, in the yesterday's lecture, we discussed that we have three categories: water phenol system, which are partially miscible with each other, and their solubility increases when you increase the temperature. Then we saw the second system, that is water triethylamine system, in which the solubility decreases when you increase the temperature. So in order to get them mixed completely, you have to decrease the temperature. So they have a lower consolate temperature. And the third category, water nicotine system, they have both upper consolate temperature and lower consolate temperature. So that was the case with the partially miscible liquids. Now we will discuss those liquid systems in which the two liquids are completely invisible. They practically do not dissolve with each other, and therefore a single phase is not possible with them. Like in case of liquid which are completely visible, we saw a single phase. They form a homogeneous solution. In case of liquids having partial miscibility, we saw that a single phase is possible in them at certain temperatures, and we call it consolate temperature. And beyond that range, beyond the range of consolate temperature, what happens? Two different phases exist. But in case of invisible liquids, they always have two phases because they won't mix together. And practically, we are considering that their visibility is zero. For example, we have oil and water. They are two invisible liquids. You can take any polar solvent along with a non-polar solvent. Together, when you mix them, they will form practically two phases. One floats over the top of the other. So the heavier liquid will remain at the bottom, and the lighter liquid will float on the top of the other. So this is the system of two invisible liquids. Now let us talk about their vapor pressure. What will be the effect of vapor pressure? So when you have mixed two invisible liquids and they both are volatile in nature, so what will happen? They both will evaporate, right? They both will evaporate, and they will have their individual vapor pressure. Now why we are considering the condition of agitation? We are assuming that the mixture is being agitated because in case of invisible liquid, one liquid will cover entirely the other liquid, right? So now in that scenario, you can ask then how the other liquid will get evaporated if it is already covered by some other liquid. So in case if we have agitated the mixture, then these two layers are getting mixed with each other. And now on the surface, it is not only one liquid that is present on the surface, both the liquids are present. And therefore they both will have their vapor pressure. So in case we are assuming that our mixture is being agitated and we have a system of two invisible liquids, then they will be in equilibrium with their vapors. Right? At room temperature, we have seen that all the liquids which are volatile in nature, they have some vapor pressure. So the total vapor pressure for such system will be what? Total vapor pressure will be the sum of the individual vapor pressure. Total vapor pressure of the system will be equal to vapor pressure of component A plus vapor pressure of component B. And here we are taking the vapor pressure of pure liquid. Why is it so? Because the two liquids are not miscible with each other. Like in case of Raoult's law, we have seen that the vapor pressure was getting changed because the mixture was miscible. The two liquids were getting mixed with each other, so their vapor pressure will change in the mixture. But when the two liquids are not mixing with each other, then practically in the mixture itself they will have their individual vapor pressure, and that will be the characteristic of their independent state. So basically they are maintaining their independent state in such type of system when we have immiscible liquid system. So we have considered that they are in equilibrium with their vapors. Now let us take an example here. Like for example, we are taking phenylamine and water. We can treat these two liquids like they are completely immiscible. They are completely immiscible liquids. Although to a certain extent you can say they are invisible. Practically, a slight visibility could be there, but actually, that slight invisibility is not our concern. We can say that practically they are invisible. So, at 98 degrees Celsius, suppose my temperature is 98 degrees Celsius, the saturated vapor pressure of two pure liquids will be. Now, the vapor pressure of the phenylamine will be characteristic of phenylamine, and vapor pressure of water will be characteristic of water. They both are behaving like two independent liquids, and at this much temperature, at 98 degrees Celsius, they will have their individual vapor pressure. Now, if you sum these two vapor pressure, the total vapor pressure of the agitated mixture, if you are agitating the mixture, you are continuously mixing the mixture, then for the agitated mixture, if you sum these two values, it will come to what? 101.37 kilopascal. And this is what? This is the atmospheric pressure. So what happens? What happens when the vapor pressure of a liquid becomes equal to its become equals to the vapor pressure of atmospheric pressure? When a liquid has vapor pressure equal to atmospheric pressure, it will start boiling. So what happens in such system where my two liquids are immiscible? They will have their individual vapor pressure, and as soon as the individual vapor pressure we sum it and it becomes equal to the atmospheric pressure, our system will start boiling. So what happens in case of two immiscible liquids? We have a system in which we have two immiscible liquids. The mixture will boil below the boiling point of each of the component. Why is it so? Because at lower temperature itself, the sum of their vapor pressure will become equal to the atmospheric pressure, and now they will boil earlier as compared to their independent states. So here comes the process of steam distillation. I have told you what is distillation. When you heat a liquid and it is converted into its vapors and you're collecting those vapors, then we call it what? This is steam distillation. And in case of steam distillation, what happens? You can actually separate liquids. So the distillation of liquids that are fully miscible, we know that they are governed by the Raoult's law. And what happens? The total vapor pressure, as you can see here, the total vapor pressure of the system will be what? It will depend upon the mole fraction of that component multiplied by its vapor pressure in the independent state in the case of pure component. So we add practically all the components, and what we get the total vapor pressure of the system. So in such type of case, if you distill such type of mixtures, then what will happen? The mixture will have its own unique boiling point, and the contribution of each component to the vapor phase is related to its partial vapor pressure and mole fraction. So when our liquids are completely visible with each other, we are also taking into account the mole fraction of the liquid, how much that liquid is present in my mixture, because my liquids are visible. But when I am distilling the immiscible liquids. They are not mixed at all. They have zero miscibility. So what will happen? The two act as two separate liquid, like you can see here in this beaker. This A and B, they are two different components of a mixture. They are not getting mixed with each other. They are immiscible liquids. So they will stay in two separate layers. So now if I find out the total vapor pressure of the system, that will be equal to the sum of the vapor pressures and sum of the vapor pressure independent of their relative amounts. Now I am not taking mole fraction here. If you can see the equation too, I am not considering mole fraction part here, and the total vapor pressure will be simply equal to the vapor pressures of all my components in their independent state, because they are not mixed. They are behaving like an independent liquid. So what will happen? Now this mixture will boil at a temperature typically lower than the ether liquid. The boiling point of such mixture will be what? It will boil quickly. And why is it so? Because now the vapor pressure, the total vapor pressure will be quickly equals to the atmospheric pressure. And as soon as the vapor pressure will become equal to the atmospheric pressure, my mixture will boil. Like I have told you just now in case of water and phenylamine. They are behaving like independent liquids, and the sum of their vapor pressure will become equal to the atmospheric pressure. So in that case, what will happen? In that case, the mixture will boil quickly. So now let us consider another mixture. Now suppose we have a mixture of iodobenzene and water. They are again for an example of two invisible liquids. And these two invisible liquids, iodobenzene and water, when you mix together, when you mix them, what happens at 98 degrees Celsius? At 98 degrees Celsius, both of these liquids will have their individual vapor pressure. So in case of iodobenzene, the vapor pressure at 98 degrees Celsius will be 46 torr, and in case of water at 98 degrees Celsius, the vapor pressure would be 714 torr. So at this temperature, what happens? The total vapor pressure of system, now it becomes what? 760 torr, and 760 torr is what? This is the value of atmospheric pressure. So as soon as the vapor pressure of the system becomes equal to the atmospheric pressure, now what will happen? My mixture will boil. So you can see a graph here, the small graph. What happens? In case of component A, this is the vapor pressure of component A, and this will become equal to 760 torr at this point, and this is the point representing the boiling point of component A. In case of component B, this is BPB, that is boiling point of component B. What happens? The vapor pressure PB naught becomes equal to 760 torr here, and this component will boil at this point. But what happens when I mix both these components? When I mix component A with component B, the total vapor pressure becomes equals to 760 torr at a temperature far below the boiling point of any of them. And now what will happen? The boiling point of mixture is lower than the boiling point of my either of the component. So in case of immiscible liquids, what is the observation? The boiling point of the mixture is lower than either of the component, than the boiling point of the either of the component. And that is why, because the liquids are behaving like independent liquid, and their total vapor pressure become equal to the atmospheric pressure much earlier at a much lower temperature. So they start boiling, the mixture start boiling. Now when the mixture is boiling, the mole fraction of each component, Na and Nb, in the vapor phase is given by their ratio of the partial pressure over the total pressure. So Na is the mole fraction of component A, and Nb is the mole fraction of component B. How you can calculate it? So from Raoult's law, we have already seen this equation 3 and 4. These both equations can be derived from Raoult law. So Na is equal to P naught A upon Pt, that is the vapor pressure of pure component upon the vapor pressure of total vapor pressure, and Nb is equal to vapor pressure of the uh, mole fraction of the component B in its vapor phase, which we can calculate it by dividing the vapor pressure of component B upon total vapor pressure of the system. So from this equation you can calculate the composition of the vapor phase, how much component A and how much component B is present there. Now what? In the distillation process, we are not only vaporizing a liquid, we are also condensing the vapors. And it is that condensation part which actually separates the two liquids. So if the vapor is condensed, if I am condensing the vapor, the resulting distillate has the same composition. What is distillate? When you condense those vapor, when you cool down the vapors, what will happen? Now again the vapor will be converted into liquid, and that liquid will be again in the form of some mixture, because in vapor phase also I have both the components A and B. When you cool down the vapors, you will get both the components A and B, and in that case, after cooling the vapors, the liquid that you're getting, the mixture that you're getting is called the distillate. So the resulting distillate will have the same composition like we have in case of the vapors. So what will be the ratio of the concentration of these components? So the ratio of the mole fractions for A and B in the distillate is given by equation 5. So we have equation 3, we have equation 4, and now we have equation 5. So how we get that? You are dividing Na upon Nb. You are dividing equation 3 by equation 4. So you get what? Na upon Nb, that is the ratio of the mole fractions of two components in the distillate. And you can get it by simply dividing the vapor pressure of pure component A upon vapor pressure of pure component B. This is very simple equation. When you are going for the steam distillation of two immiscible liquids, you can calculate how much, what will be the composition of your distillate after the steam distillation process. Like we have taken example of iodobenzene and water. And in vapor phase, iodobenzene would only have a mole fraction of 0.064. So what does it say? It says that at 98 degrees Celsius, or you can say at the boiling point of the mixture, what happens? It has a vapor pressure of 46 torr upon 714 torr. That is my formula. So mole fraction is what? 0.064. Because it has a larger molecular weight. What is the molecular weight of iodobenzene? It is 204. And what is the molecular weight of water? It is 18. So because this iodobenzene is a heavier molecule, for every batch of your distillate, you get a very less quantity of iodobenzene for every gram of water. You get only 0.7 gram of iodobenzene collected for every gram of water, and that is why, because this is quite a heavy molecule, having large molecular weight. So in the gas phase, these two are fully miscible. Why? Because in the gaseous phase, the molecules are far apart, and now both the vapors can mix together. Now you practically need not to consider what are the intermolecular forces, because any of the two gases or any two components in the vapor phase, you can mix them. Here, the miscibility concept is not applicable because molecules are far apart. Any other type of molecule could be inserted into them. So, in the gaseous phase, when they both are evaporated, they are fully miscible, and when the vapors condenses, now again they become two immiscible liquid, because they are immiscible in their liquid state, right? So, in this manner, we can separate them. After the steam distillation, what you can do? Steam distillation is when you are distilling something with water, right? When you distill something with water, when you make a mixture of some liquid along with the water, and then you are distilling it. This is called steam distillation. So what we can do, This after the steam distillation of iodobenzene, we can physically separate them. Now, this was all about the immiscible liquid and steam distillation. Let us move towards our next topic, that is distribution law. This topic arises actually that how if you add certain third component in your binary system, like I have told you about the liquid-liquid system, and suppose if they are immiscible or partially miscible, but we have two components and they both are liquid. So if you add certain salt to it, what will happen? This salt, if it is miscible with component A and component B, what it will do? It will distribute itself in both the components. Like in the yesterday class, I told you that in case of water and phenol, right, we have a partially miscible liquid system. They mix together partially. If I add sodium oleate to it, sodium oleate, we discussed this example earlier. Sodium oleate, when you add to such system, what happens? It will distribute itself in both the water and phenol. It will go into water, it will go into phenol. It is soluble in both the components. So, how much quantity of sodium oleate will be there in water, and how much quantity of sodium oleate will be there in the phenol? So, how would we get to know about such thing? So, because it is related to the distribution of a solute into two liquids, we call it a distribution law. And this law was proposed by Nernst, so we call it Nernst distribution law. Now, let us see what is Nernst distribution law. According to this law, at a fixed temperature, you have fixed the temperature, you are not changing your temperature. Suppose it is room temperature, suppose it is 30 degrees Celsius, suppose it is 35 degrees Celsius, but you have to fix the temperature. You are not changing temperature. So, this law, according to this law, at a fixed temperature, a substance X distributes itself between the two immiscible solvents A and B. We have two immiscible liquids. One is A, another is B. They are in equilibrium with each other. They are not miscible with each other. And now what happens? You are adding certain substance X. So what will happen in such a way that the ratio of the concentration of X in the two solvent is constant. The ratio of what? Ratio of the concentration of X in solvent A upon concentration of X in solvent B. This ratio is, suppose C1 is the concentration of X in solvent A and C2 is concentration of X in solvent B. So this C1 upon C2 is constant. What is constant? The ratio of these two concentration is constant, and we call it what? This is the distribution coefficient or partition coefficient. So why it is constant? Because I have fixed the temperature. At a temperature, the value of partition coefficient is fixed. So this is my Nernst distribution law. It tells me that if I add a certain component to a system of two immiscible liquid and I have fixed the temperature, I have maintained the temperature constant. So in that case, what happens? The ratio of the two concentrations C1 upon C2 will be constant. And it is actually the values have already been derived and we have a huge data available regarding the partition coefficient. So this is my Nernst distribution law. The constant K that we are using here is distribution or partition coefficient of solute between the two liquids. Now this value, this partition coefficient, it is independent of the total amount of solute added. Total amount of solute added, how much solute you have added does not matter. That ratio will be same. Like again, take the same example, water and phenol. If I have added 5 grams of sodium oleate into it, and if suppose 2 gram is going to water and 3 gram is going to phenol, right? So that 2 by 3 will be constant always. If I add 10 grams of sodium oleate to it, then in water 4 grams will be there, and in the phenol 6 gram will be there. So that 2 by 3 will come again. So irrespective of the total amount of solute, how much solute you have added to the system does not matter, because this is a ratio, and that ratio will be fixed. At a certain temperature, that ratio will be fixed. So the amount of solvent used or unit in which the concentration is expressed, that also does not matter. How much solvent you have used, that also does not matter. And the unit, like your what concentration units are you are using. Suppose if you are using mole per liter, you are using normality, molarity, whatever you are using, that also does not matter, because this ratio is always fixed, provided that we have two conditions. What are the two conditions? That our partition coefficient will be a fixed value. First condition is that my temperature is constant, and second condition is that the molecule, the solute X, should not have undergone association or dissociation in either of the liquid. It should be, it should exist in the same molecular state in both the solvent. If it changes its molecular state, then what happens? There will be distribution deviation from the distribution law. So this distribution law, the Nernst distribution law, comes with two conditions. First is temperature should remain constant, and second is the molecule, the solute should have exist in the same molecular state in both the solvents. So generally what happens, it is a convention that higher concentration is kept in the numerator. So you into whichever the solvent your solute is going in higher concentration, you will put it on the numerator at the upper part, है ना? And if the lower concentration is kept at the denominator, so what will happen? The numerator value is high and your denominator value is low, so you will get K greater than 1. So this is the general convention it is done. So if my sodium oleate will go more into the phenol, so I will put its concentration in phenol on the numerator, and the concentration of sodium oleate in water, I will put that in the denominator. Higher concentration we will put in the numerator, lower in the denominator. This is general convention, and that is why generally the value of K is greater than 1. Now the value of distribution coefficient, it depends upon the nature of solute. I have told you it does not changes with the amount of solute. It does not change whatever amount of solute you have added, whatever amount of solvent you have taken, it does not change. But it depends, it changes when you change the solute. So it depends upon the nature of solute. It also changes when you change the solvent, when you change the two immiscible liquid to which you are adding them. So it also changes when you change the solvent, and also when you change the temperature. So this distribution coefficient is actually, it depends upon the nature of solute, nature of solvent, and temperature. Now a very important condition was pointed out by Nernst. He said that distribution law is valid only when the solute undergoes no change in either of the liquid, in either of the solvent, when it undergoes no change. Like what are the changes that it can undergo? Like it can dissociate in the solvent, it can associate in the solvent. In either of the solvent, this can happen. Like in case of NaCl, if you add NaCl to water, what will happen? It will dissociate. It will dissociate into Na plus and Cl minus ion. Or like if I add benzoic acid, certain organic solvent, it exists in dimers. Even the acetic acid exists in dimer in its solution. So that is association. When two molecules are existing together. In case of acetic acid, maybe you have heard that hydrogen bonding is there, and acetic acid exists in the dimer. So two molecules exist together, and this is association of molecules. In case of salts, what happens? Dissociation happens. So Nernst pointed out that this should not be the case. If my molecule is getting associated or dissociated in either of the solvent, then what will happen? Distribution law is not valid. So the molecule can change its condition. It can dissociate into simple molecular ion, and it is also possible that it associates to form complex molecule. Then we have variation from the distribution law, and that variation we will calculate in the later slides. Another important thing is it is applicable only to the concentration of a particular species common to both of the layers. So, species like suppose my molecule has undergone some association or dissociation in both the liquids. So, then distribution law will be valid for that particular species that I am considering in both the layers. Like suppose for example my acetic acid, if I am acetic acid as using as a solute, so if the dimerization is happening to the acetic acid and it is occurring in both the liquids, in both the immiscible liquid, it is existing in the form of a dimer, then I will consider the concentration of that dimer only, and in that condition what will happen, my distribution law is applicable. So the distribution law is actually very important, and it has a very different type of applications in the analytical chemistry. So different type of applications we will discuss in the next lecture. Now this application we will discuss. Now let us discuss some questions. First question is, distribution coefficient is dependent of, on which of these following factors my distribution coefficient depends? Could you tell me? Nature of solute, amount of solute, temperature, and nature of solvent. So I have four factors here. On which of these factors my distribution coefficient depends? So, like I have told you, if your answer is nature of solute, then you are wrong, because distribution coefficient depends on the nature of solute. If your answer is amount of solute, then you are right. Why is it so? Because distribution coefficient does not depend upon the amount of solute. Okay, whatever quantity of solute you have added to the system, it does not changes the distribution coefficient. If your answer is temperature, then you are wrong, because yes, distribution coefficient depends on temperature. If you change the temperature, distribution coefficient changes. And if your answer is nature of solvent, then sorry again, this is wrong answer, because distribution coefficient actually also depends on the nature of solvent. If you change the solvent, then distribution coefficient will also change. Now let us move towards the next question, that is, Nernst distribution law is valid only when. So just now I have told you the two conditions when my Nernst distribution
Mango,
law is valid. Yes,
solute undergoes no changes, I think.
very good, very good, very good. So if your answer is this A, then you are absolutely right, and congratulations, you were listening so carefully. Because if my solute undergoes association, or if my solute undergoes dissociation, or it tends to form some complex molecule, then definitely Nernst distribution law is not valid for such case. The, the ideal condition should be the solute should not undergo any change in either of the liquid, and then only the ratio of the two concentrations will be constant, and it will be equal to the distribution coefficient. So that is all from today. Thank you so much for joining. And now please attempt your quiz on LMS. Thank you
Okay,
so
ma'am.
much.
Thank you, ma'am.